Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will give it another few seconds for everyone else to join, and then we'll get started. So thank you for your patience. All right. I think it's time to get started. Um, Good afternoon, good morning, and thank you for joining. Our webinar today is titled "Is Your Data Your Weakest Link? Is it time to get it under control?" My name is Joe Sorial. I am VP of Product here at ShardSecure, and joining me is Julian Weinberger. Hey, Julian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Julian Weinberger, Field CTO of ShardSecure. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope we got a good 45 minutes together. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we got a packed agenda here, but it's going to move really quickly. So we'll start out talking a little bit about some current data security challenges. We'll talk about the ever-evolving compliance frameworks and some of the things that are going out there, and how to address some of those challenges. Some recommendations, best practices. We'll do a very brief Shard Secure overview, tell you guys what we're all about, and wrap it up with some key takeaways and some Q&A. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A window, and we'll address as many as we can towards the end of the webinar. So starting out with the data security challenges, obviously, when we talk about data security, the first thing we think about is how do I secure structured data? We're thinking about big, massive databases with lots of user accounts and some PII in there. And that really tends to be the focus. But we seldom think about unstructured data, which also present a high value target for attackers. So when we talk about unstructured data, it could take the form of many things depending on what kind of vertical you're in. So if you're in media and entertainment, for example, it could be clips of music, or it could be film or clips from a film that hasn't yet been released. It could be, if you're in high tech, for example, source code. If you're in manufacturing, it could be things like design files or schematics. And those are feature or value rich targets for attackers. And because they're seldom protected, it could leave organizations exposed. So, speaking of that, we have three examples here from recent data leaks. And just kind of talking through them, they really go across different verticals and really affect everybody. So the first one is an airline, which exposed 6.5 terabytes of data, which is about 23 million files. Excuse me. And the files included things like flight plans, navigation, source code. It was really a whole bunch of things that were really important for that organization. The next one was in healthcare, and this is, think of like a telemed type arrangement, where this particular organization leaked data for 12,000 patients or about 300,000 image files. So lots and lots of data, lots and lots of issues there. And then the final one is more in the public sector, where an organization leaked information around 820,000 current and former students. And this was demographic data, academic records, biographic data. So the sensitive data is there and it's not secure, and attackers know this and are taking advantage of it. So when we ask why that is, really data security is hard, and data security was hard when everything was sitting on prem, and you could touch and you know where your storage locations are. Maybe you segmented those storage locations. Maybe you put them in your perimeter, behind your perimeter. Um, you're able to manage the access pretty readily. But with cloud adoption and cloud migrations, there's a level of opaqueness that now comes with data security, because that data is not sitting in your infrastructure anymore. It's sitting in somebody else's infrastructure. And along with that come a whole bunch of knobs and dials and buttons around managing access and setting the right policies and making sure that that data is secure, even though it's not sitting in your infrastructure. So you look at things like configuration, misconfigurations, resulting in exposure of 3 terabytes worth of data on Amazon S3, for example, or the difficulty around monitoring, where now you have issues with insiders that are now leaking data out. So you have a headline here that says 1 in 10 employees is leaking sensitive data every 6 months. That's huge exposure, and that's a huge area of risk for organizations. So when we look at where that data is sitting, it's sitting in a number of places that are often overlooked and often unprotected. So it could be file servers, for example, holding confidential information. It could be cloud storage, for example, where now there's misconfigurations, but also the admins have access to that data just by virtue of having to maintain that infrastructure. But in reality, they really shouldn't have access directly to the data. And then there's an emerging set of headaches that's coming up around machine learning data sets. And this impacts organizations that rely on advanced analytics, where now if the ML models or the underlying data sets that are powering the ML models get compromised, that could potentially render different results and different outputs out of the analytics, or maybe they just won't work at all, which again poses a huge risk for organizations that rely on those types of technologies. So, Julian, you talk to a lot of customers, right? What are you seeing out there? Is this stuff ringing true? What other things are you seeing that are impacting our customers?
Yeah, I mean, data security and how you secure data has always been in the center of the conversation, especially in the last couple of years. And we've seen a lot of attention being on where's my sensitive data stored and how to secure it. And that's kind of what you brought up initially. There's a lot of focus on databases, and they basically how it's been secured. There's different mechanisms out there to secure that. But a lot of the breaches, as well as the compliance, violations actually happen on what's typically known as unstructured data. It's your files on a file server, or it's just a huge data lake which got affected. So all of this, we need to look at it since we do have sensitive data on there. And I think the other concern we're seeing is that there is a difference between being compliant and being secure. Obviously, that it overlaps, and as a security professional, you should drive towards both being compliant and secure, but it has a different kind of mindset. So, a lot of the compliance is focused on personal data and how we keep that secure, which is part of a business value, but not always. We've also seen customers of ours being very concerned around data which they consider confidential, but not necessarily sensitive in a compliance angle. This use that engineering plans, IP information, accounting data, all of that is sitting there. And then that also ties into some of the need to know which you need to enforce from other compliance and regulations, because a lot of those systems are not built for it. If you look for a traditional file server, right? The file server admin or whoever has the privileged access can always read the data on there, which is not necessarily a need to know. So it's one if you're addressing that from an insider threat. It's another one uh, issue if you see from a risk because you create your a huge center of value for an attacker. And that's what we've seen in data breaches is they're going to go for the S3 buckets, they're going to go for the file servers, they're going to go for storage, because the amount of data you can pull without being protected is fairly large and fairly sensitive.
Yeah, and,
So,
and the attackers are going to go after the soft targets,
oh,
right? So
yeah,
it's high value, it's unprotected, it's a no brainer for them.
yeah. So we've seen this, and obviously we've all been in the seats of like trying to bring data security and security to our organizations. So it is a challenge, and I think especially in the unstructured data world, there's other challenges which do not exist, in, for example, in the structured data world, right? Structured data world, we all know what is sensitive and what not. You know, all the credit card numbers are fairly easy to identify. That's a different animal when we talk about unstructured. It's a constant battle, and it just needs to be a better and easier approach. And I think we'll look at this later. But I think one large driver in the last couple of years has also been compliances. So a lot of us in the security field are very focused on also being compliant and making sure we keep track of this. And if we look at the actual compliance, how it develops, it it really is a struggle to keep up with that. So we got a couple forecasts and statistics here. The focus from Gartner is that by 2024, 75% of the world's population will be regulated one way or another, or the data is regulated. That means that a lot of new country regulations will pop up in the next year or so, right? And we've all seen this happening actually in Europe. That was probably the biggest shock in the industry because they're so strict. And now a lot of countries in Asia are pulling off and basically using GDPR as a blueprint. for their country regulations and data protection. So we'll see that we as data owners need to be aware of all these growing frameworks and compliances that are out there. And then even within the US, we have a statistic here on how many states are passing and considering laws every year. And basically every year you have at least one or two states passing a new law, and you have plenty of other ones considering passing a new law. So not only do we need to keep up with the created without threat landscape, but we also need to make sure that we are compliant, because we usually have businesses in multiple states as well as in multiple countries, no matter how we see this. And this can really, really generate an issue for people when you export data, especially in the cloud. I think one of the biggest struggle we have seen in the recent years has been the compliance in the cloud, especially in Europe. Europe, you have basically a Schrems 2 judgment, which, long story short, prevents you to have any European data within the control of an American entity, which is a problem by itself, because most of the cloud providers, as well as actually most of our SaaS services, are hosted by an American identity one way or another. So that really generates an issue on how to move to the cloud and get actually the business benefits of the cloud, right? Like, a lot of our customers want to move to the cloud and want to take the benefits of it. I mean, it's more scalable. It's easier to use. You don't need to do it. There's a cost savings to it. All of that really matters. But there is a security issue with moving to the cloud, especially if you deal with European data. And that has been a real issue for a lot of people, and you need to be aware of it. So if you have businesses, for example, overseas, you need to be aware of it. How do I actually deal now with that export of data? Because sometimes your data workflows are just designed this way. It's not because it's a bad design. It's just the way our industry works, right? We want to share data, we want to make sense out of data, and therefore we export data across different jurisdictions. So compliances in the cloud has been a big topic, especially for organizations working in Europe and are established in Europe. Has been a very, very sensitive topic. And we've always heard that, it is there, and the fines are there as well. And we looked at the actual data on this, and we've saw the fines are actually going up. So it is something where we see GDPR has a different amount of fines, and they're actually executing that, and they fine companies. So it's not something we need to think of like it doesn't happen anymore. Oh, it does. So fines are there, and fines are being issued, and you might or might not be under this. So I think what's very interesting seeing this from a security perspective. So if you're in charge of security within your organization, you're concerned around your business and keeping the business up and running and damage to the business, but also to whatever data is hosted. And I think compliance is one of those angles where if you violate compliance and you actually get fines, that could actually be a business impact for you, right? It hurts your business. It's never great to pay fines anywhere, as well as going through the audit for it. So one thing we saw, there's a decent amount of blueprint out there on how to really tackle that, because data security has been tricky, and it's a hard topic to grapple. And I think that's one of the problems of what we have within data security in general. So let's have a good quick look on kind of what's recommended to really be done in that field. So I think the first step is get to know your data. I think it's very important to understand where your data resides and who has access and who needs access. That just gives you the basics of let's say, a fine print or a blueprint of what should actually happen in real time versus what is happening, right? So you want to know if you have data spread out in different jurisdictions. Are you actually under the umbrella of some of the compliances, or is that an issue of you? If you have data residing in a third party, let's say a cloud provider or a SaaS service, are you aware where that data resides? Because you're still basically accountable for that from your customer point of view. And then you need to understand who has access. I think the who has access is more complex to answer than it mostly seems. Right now, we've seen that who has access already a tricky answer sometimes if you're on-prem, and that becomes more trickier as soon as you move to the cloud because you actually ingest a third party of hosting the data and theoretically has access to it, right? So, and then comes the question, okay, now I know kind of who has access theoretically or possibly, who needs access and who should have access, right? All of those things need to be defined um, in this. Those are things which I think data or security as a general has been based on for a long time. But if we talk about the level where data resides, this is a very tricky question to answer, because think about it from a typical, let's say, a storage array. There's humans accessing it, there's machines accessing it, other machines, there's application accessing it, and then these applications are accessed by another application. So understanding the data flow is very important, so you understand who has access and where does the data go. And then we need to understand also, where is your sensitive data? A lot of us have gone through data discovery projects. That's a very important step, and you should always do that. It's always recommended, but that only gives you the sensitive data from a compliance angle, right? That does not necessarily show you sensitive data which is sensitive to your business, right? Where are my engineering plans? Where's my IP? Where's my code? Is my code protected from exposure or being attacked one way or another? So all of those you got to keep in mind, because only if you know that, you will be aware of what compliance framework you're actually affected by. And from a compliance framework, I think what we usually understand, we as an industry, is the more industry specific ones, like the credit card ones or the healthcare ones or the financial services ones. But then there's also frameworks in different countries and different states. So that becomes a little bit more tricky because we need to involve them and make sure we have them. But that is kind of the basis to really get a hold of your data and get the control back. Since you now know what kind of actionable items you have moving forward, right? If you understand where your data lives and where it is and what the risks are you need to mitigate, then it's easier to mitigate the risks. And mitigating the risk, it can be very tricky. In data security, I've been in data security for quite a while. Sometimes in data security, we're solving a headache by introducing a new headache. And that's not good, right? And we've seen this actually in security for a long time. We resolve a security headache, but we introduce like a maintenance headache, which is not good. So, but to really get control of your data, you should have an easy way to implement it and separate data access from your infrastructure. The reason why this is important is the way our IT systems are built now is a lot of times the privileged user can access all the data, which is not a good thing. That actually happens to you in the cloud, and that happens to you on-prem. And that's especially an issue for unstructured data and wherever unstructured data resides. This is why you also see the big headlines of a lot of data being exposed always come straight off wherever the unstructured data was. It's just fairly easy to get access to a privileged access account and then just grab the entire data which resides there. So we really need to decouple that. That's important on-prem, and as I said, it's more important in the cloud probably. And then ensure the need to know and the least privilege. We've probably all been in the business for a long, long time, and they've always been the things to do, but they're sometimes very hard to execute on. Like the least privilege is a very tricky topic when you host data in a third party. Like, how do I have a least privilege if my data is hosted in a SaaS, where the SaaS hosted is by a third party, and then the SaaS itself is somewhere in another cloud, which I don't control. So really ensuring that is tricky. You can always ask the SaaS provider, obviously, on what they're doing for it and how do they do tenant separation and so on. But make sure that there's no even theoretical way to access your data. And a lot of compliances actually force you, especially the European compliances, to make sure that the cloud provider does not have any access to the data, especially if they're headquartered out of a different jurisdictions. One good way to get a hold of your data is protect your data at rest. I think a lot of the breaches we've seen can actually be resolved at a data at rest way. I don't mean that by simply clicking a box. I think if we protect the data before it's stored in the storage, we can actually avoid a lot of the issues which come from an exposure on these platforms which store unstructured data. And that really helps us to just reduce the risk and really eliminate those headlines Joe showed us initially. I think one of and very important step in controlling your data is be sure that you implement something which is transparent to your current workflows. You do not want to reinvent the wheel on your data workflows or your user behavior. I think every time you change user behavior or data workflows, you introduce more issues than you actually resolve. And none of us needs that. None of us needs another job. It should be easy to implement. It should be easy enough to handle and not disturb any of my current workflows. I think it's very important. And the other thing we've seen, since there is really an evolving compliance frameworks all around the world, is be prepared for constant change around those things. So there will be more compliances and frameworks and blueprints coming up which force you to change one way or another. So whatever you implement to control your data should be very, very flexible to adjust to any of those. So you do not want to rip and replace as soon as there's a new compliance. As your current solution should be built flexible enough to be prepared for those new solutions. Joe, you've spent a lot of time also talking with customers as a VP of product to really see the challenges and how to address them. Maybe you could give us an idea how you address them with ShardSecure and kind of what ShardSecure is all about.
Yeah, it's always interesting talking to the security guys and the compliance guys, because even though they may be speaking slightly different languages, they're still kind of struggling with the same thing, right? Which is, how do I protect my data and how do I stay off the headlines? And the importance of what you said, which is making sure that whichever decisions are made are scalable and transparent and don't impact overall operations and are easy to maintain, becomes really important. And as luck would have it, I'm about to give you a quick overview into ShardSecure. So, ShardSecure has been around for a number of years. Started by industry veterans who are working security basically their entire careers. We have patented technology that provides very strong security and resilience, really kind of regardless of where the data resides. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes in terms of how the platform works. And by virtue of that, we're able to do some pretty interesting things around ensuring privacy and ransomware protection. And all of this happens in an agentless fashion, which makes deployment and maintenance very, very easy. We have locations all throughout US and Europe, so we service our customers wherever they are. And it's just a solid team to be working with, frankly. In terms of the what we do, the reason we get out of bed every morning is to simplify data protection. And we do this in a very transparent, kind of an abstraction layer sort of way between sources of data and where the data is stored. I mentioned the agentless deployment, which I think is a big differentiator for us when you compare ShardSecure versus other solutions that solve similar problems. And really, the whole point is to give our customers back a sense of control around their data and making sure they are able to control access, but then also have that separation of duties between the infrastructure guys and the guys that really need to consume the data. And again, along with that, we have some really interesting use cases around data integrity and availability. So when you look at ShardSecure, you could really think of it as an abstraction layer. So on the left, you have things that create and need to access data. And on the right, you have the storage location where the data eventually ends up. And if ShardSecure wasn't in the picture, you'd have all these applications, servers, and users basically, writing and reading data from these storage locations in a pretty much unsecured manner, right? It's data just kind of flowing, and there's not a whole lot to do between the originating point and the destination. Now, with ShardSecure, like I said, it's think of it as a transparent proxy or an abstraction layer where now these application servers or users would write files to the ShardSecure platform. The ShardSecure platform would take that file and basically break it up into very small fragments that are inaccessible, unreadable. So whether it's fragments or shards, and basically taking that and spreading it across all of the storage locations that you have. So it's completely user configurable in terms of where that data should end up. So that data is secure at the moment that it's written to storage. And then by the same token, when it's time to go in and access the data, that access is actually happening through the ShardSecure platform. So ShardSecure is going out, it's pulling up all of the shards of that original file, it's putting it together, and it's making it available to the authorized user or server or whatever it might be. So access controls is something that's built into the platform, and it's something that's enforced. Um, because of the way the technology works, it actually has some other additional benefits. So, because the shards are spread across multiple storage locations, we can do some things around data resilience, where as long as more than 50% of the storage locations are intact and untampered with, we can still um, bring that data back and make it accessible with no hiccups in operations. And because the storage locations are now abstracted from the things that are creating and accessing the data, so the applications and servers, it really gives the operations guys a lot of flexibility in terms of where they want to store that data. And that could be driven by a number of things. It could be FinOps, for example, around cost optimization, or it could be just because of performance. So going to storage locations that offer more performance, lower latency, for example, or going into storage locations that are more cost effective, again, depending on what parameters. But the good news there is you can make those decisions absent of having to go in and touch any of your existing applications or any of your existing servers. Julian, anything else to cover on this one?
No, I mean, what we hear from our customers is it's an easy way to basically introduce data security to your data. Um, that has been a struggle for them. Most of them, really, it is just a set and forget. You put it in and you forget about it, which is a welcome change in the industry compared to any of the other things you need to do. Um, Also, data residency can be addressed through it. A lot of our customers are very happy with it. Um, the way we usually deploy is, as Joe said, as an abstraction layer, which the beauty of is that neither the things you see on your screen on the left side nor the things on the right side are really aware that data security is implemented, and you don't need to touch those things. So by implementing that in such a transparent way, and without introducing a performance hit, you really have a fast way to implement it and no one will notice. So you get a security benefit without getting any of the usual downturns of like maintenance or integration work or performance drawback. So that has really been a huge driver, and all of our customers are very, very happy to tackle that and have implemented that. So it's great to be part of that and seeing how this really changes data security, making it easier for organizations, big and small, to adopt, and therefore making us as an industry better and more secure. Definitely. Yeah, I think as a key takeaway before we jump into Q&A, we can talk about things we kind of summarize real quick, but I think identify overlooked and unprotected data repositories. Think about if you're an attacker, you go whatever, the lowest bar is to get in, which is the one which is not super protected, which is the one which is easy to just grab a lot of data at the same time. A lot of times it is your typical file server, storage arrays, all of those things, cloud storage, whatever's really unstructured. I think structured, we as a business, or not a business, we as an industry have a pretty good hold on it. And then really also decouple data access from the infrastructure access. There's no reason why an storage admin should read your accounting information, and there's really even less reasons for a cloud provider to read your stuff. So this is very important just because it reduces the risk, and it also makes you more compliant if you look at compliances which are coming up around the world. And that gets to the next point. See if you can implement something which is flexible and scalable enough to really support you as an organization. You as an organization, you're probably growing, and you will expand into different territories, which will come with different data sovereignty issues or compliance challenges. All of this come in, or you go into different categories where you different things like PCI certifications or fintech or healthcare and so on. So all of this could hit you. So make sure that whatever you put in is flexible and scalable from an integration point of view, but also from all the compliance and regulation framework coming down the pipeline. And then we are in a multi or hybrid cloud environment. A lot of us are on-prem, but the cloud's sneaking into our environments one way or another, even if we try to avoid it. We've heard a lot from customers as well. We stayed on-prem, and then some HR portal becomes a SaaS, and all of a sudden you're in the cloud, right? So those things happen. Be aware of that. Whatever solution you pick to really tackle that, make sure that they have a similar approach for on-prem as well as a cloud, and also hybrid cloud. We're usually not stuck with one cloud or one cloud provider. There's usually a hybrid cloud environment. And we at ShardSecure see data security as a team sport. We've all been in the industry for a long time, and we know that data security and data protection can be tricky and can be complex. And I think a lot of those issues of adoption of data security, or all the, let's say, the rumors which are going around, can be addressed just by exchanging knowledge. And we're more than happy to do that. We've done data security in so many different organizations, and really has raised the bar for them to easily implement it, that we can do it. We understand that you not only deal with security, you also deal with compliances a lot. So if you have questions around that, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to just share knowledge. I think a knowledge exchange is very important for us as an industry, and for us individuals as well. And we are aware that the cloud makes a lot of things harder. If you're concerned around the cloud, and want to see how European data, for example, adopt American cloud providers, again, reach out. We're more than happy to share that. All of our customers are referenceable. We're more than happy to build that bridge there. And I think in the end of the day, there's more technology being available on the market for you to be more productive as an organization, and we need to make sure we enable that. So we at ShardSecure understand that there's more technology coming, new technology, and we want to be an added benefit to the technology, not a stopper. We want to be an enabler for that. So if you're concerned around a current restructuring, or you move to the cloud, or you have data security on top of your mind, just feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to just exchange some knowledge on how other companies have done that, or we're more than happy to also do some introduction calls there, so you get an idea of how other people really tackle it, and what their issues were, and how they were resolved. Okay, Joe, I'll get it back to you to bring us home.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Julian. Nice job. Really appreciate it. So opening up to Q&A, we do have a couple. So let me just pull those up. Please continue to post questions as they come to mind. So we'll start with a couple that we do have. So first question, Julian, how easy is it for me to integrate ShardSecure into my environment? And I think this parenthesis says storage and applications.
Yeah, so I think both of them are fairly easy. So applications, the way you currently run them, they're used to read and write data to some kind of, either to a local disk, or to a storage, or to an object storage, or whatever. And we just hook in as an abstraction layer. So we can come in and just log in. You don't need to change anything on your applications, and be that abstraction layer. So it's fairly easy to do that. I think we also have a white paper in our attachment, which shows you that how easy it is. So feel free to download the white paper. But it's fairly easy to adopt to any of the applications. And for storage units, it's actually easier, because a lot of storage solutions don't necessarily care that much on what the data is. As long as they can handle the data, they can do backups, they can replications, deduplication, all of those things. So we just sit basically in front of a storage solution, and act like imagine almost like a security proxy, right? So whatever data comes through, we protect it before it goes to storage, but we totally enable the storage administrator and the storage team to do their work, and do what they usually do, to really have an running business, and provide their storage as a solution. So very easy to implement. We've seen implementation being done within an hour. So that's kind of gets you an idea how fast we do that, and how easy it is.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think I have one more. Can I use ShardSecure to store EU data in US cloud providers?
Yes, you can. That has been one of our top use cases, especially in the European Union. If you have European data, and there's compliance regulations preventing you to put this in an American cloud provider, we basically sit in between, and make sure that the sensitive data is protected before it goes in the cloud provider. So it's not real data anymore in the cloud provider. So it gets you all the benefits of the cloud without actually exposing any of your European data. So yeah, that perfectly works. And again, it's the same transparent approach as it would be for any other implementation we have.
Okay, great. And it looks like one more. What are the performance impacts of using ShardSecure in my environment?
Yeah, so we're very performance sensitive, means we are quite aware that we do not want to be another headache. So our software is built to really have no or a minimum of a performance drawback. The way we work under the hood is very performant, means there's different operations there. In the end of the day, prospects and customers don't see any performance drawback. There is, to be transparent, there's a little drawback when you do write operation, but there's a performance increase when you do read operations. But in the end, it all comes out in the wash, means you as a customer or your applications don't really see any differences, which is very refreshing to see a very fast and performant way to implement it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I don't see any more at the moment.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, really appreciate everybody's time and attention with the webinar. Hopefully, you found it helpful. As Julian mentioned, if more information is needed, there is some attachments tied to this webinar on BrightTalk, and then also our website has a ton of use cases, white papers, blog posts, things like that. So definitely reach out. We're happy to just have conversations and help out wherever we can. So thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian.